My name is Ethel, and at 52 years old, I thought I had seen every possible way my husband could disappoint me. But on my birthday last month, standing in our kitchen while preparing breakfast, just like any other morning, I never imagined that a single sentence from his mouth would completely shatter my world and set me free at the same time. What happened that evening changed everything, and I mean everything. Before I share this story with all of you, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and if you believe everyone deserves respect in their marriage, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that might just inspire you to take back your power. 28 years ago, when I married Robert, I was a bright-eyed 24-year-old librarian with dreams of running my own branch someday. Robert was 27, charming, and treated me like a queen during our courtship. He would bring me flowers every Friday, take me to nice restaurants, and always insisted on opening doors for me. Back then, he called me his equal, his partner, his best friend. The first few years of marriage were beautiful. We shared household duties, made decisions together, and supported each other's careers. I continued working full-time at the Henderson Public Library while Robert built his accounting practice. When our children came along, Emma and then Jacob 2 years later, I naturally took on more responsibilities at home, but Robert was still helpful and appreciative. Somewhere around year 10, things began to shift. Robert's business was thriving, and he started making comments about being the primary breadwinner. At first, they were casual observations, but gradually they became expectations. By year 15, I had reduced my library hours to part-time to manage our household more efficiently, and Robert had settled into a pattern of coming home, sitting in his recliner, and expecting everything to be handled for him. Now, with both kids away at college, our house felt different. Emma was studying psychology at Northwestern, and Jacob was pursuing engineering at Georgia Tech. They visited during holidays, but mostly it was just Robert and me in our 4-bedroom colonial in suburban Atlanta. Every morning I woke up at 5:30 to prepare Robert's coffee exactly how he liked it, strong and black, with his breakfast ready by 6:15 sharp. Scrambled eggs on Tuesday and Thursday, pancakes on Monday, and Friday toast and fruit the other days. My daily routine had become as predictable as clockwork. After Robert left for his office, I would clean the breakfast dishes, make our bed, start a load of laundry, and head to the library for my 3-day-a-week schedule. I worked Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 3, earning enough to cover my personal expenses and contribute to our savings. But Robert never acknowledged this contribution. When I returned home each afternoon, I would grocery shop, prepare dinner, clean the house, and handle any other household tasks that needed attention. Robert would arrive home at 6:30, eat the meal I prepared, watch television, and go to bed. On weekends, while I deep cleaned the house and meal prepped for the week, Robert played golf with his buddies or watched sports in his home office. Our social circle consisted mainly of Robert's colleagues and their wives. During gatherings, I noticed how other husbands thanked their wives publicly, helped clear tables, or at least acknowledged their contributions. Robert, however, had developed a habit of accepting compliments about our home, my cooking, or our family organization as if he deserved credit for my work. When someone praised my homemade lasagna, he would smile and say something like, "Yeah, I keep her busy in the kitchen," as if I were his employee rather than his partner. Friends like Sarah and Linda from the library often expressed concern about how Robert treated me. They had witnessed his dismissive behavior during library social events and holiday parties. Sarah once pulled me aside after Robert interrupted me mid-sentence during a conversation about a book club we were starting. "Ethel," she said gently, "you do realize how he talks to you, right?" I brushed off her concerns, defending Robert by saying he was just stressed from work. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong with our dynamic. I had become invisible in my own marriage, a background player in Robert's life story. The woman who once had opinions about literature, politics, and community issues had somehow shrunk into someone whose primary identity revolved around keeping Robert comfortable. I told myself this was what marriage required, what good wives did, what partnership looked like after nearly 3 decades together. The morning of my 52nd birthday arrived gray and drizzly, typical for October in Georgia. I woke up with a flutter of anticipation in my chest, that familiar birthday hope that maybe this year would be different. Perhaps Robert had planned something special, remembered, without me having to remind him, or at least acknowledge the significance of the day. I went through my usual morning routine, but with extra care. I chose my favorite blue blouse, the one Robert used to say brought out my eyes, and applied a little more makeup than usual. Downstairs, in our sunny yellow kitchen, I prepared what I hoped might become a celebratory breakfast. I made heart-shaped pancakes, something I used to do for the kids on special occasions, and arranged fresh strawberries in a pattern on the plate. When Robert came downstairs at his usual time, coffee mug in hand, newspaper tucked under his arm, he glanced at the decorated plate without comment. He sat at his usual spot at the breakfast table, unfolded his paper, and began eating while reading the sports section. I waited, expecting him to notice the special touches or remember the date. After 10 minutes of silence, broken only by the rustle of newspaper pages and the clink of his fork against the plate, I finally spoke up. "The pancakes turned out well this morning, don't you think?" "Mm-hmm," Robert responded without looking up from an article about the Atlanta Braves. I tried again, more directly. "It's a beautiful day for October 23rd. "Is it?" he replied absently. "Looked pretty cloudy to me." My heart sank a little deeper. I waited another few minutes, hoping the date would trigger some recognition, but Robert finished his breakfast, folded his newspaper, and stood up from the table. "I've got that Peterson audit starting today," he said, carrying his empty plate to the sink, but leaving it there for me to wash. "Probably won't be home until 7 tonight. Don't hold dinner." And just like that, he was gone, grabbing his briefcase from the hall table and backing out of our driveway without a single acknowledgement that this day was any different from any other. At the library, the day brightened considerably. Sarah had decorated my small desk area with colorful streamers and a hand-drawn "Happy Birthday, Ethel" sign. Linda brought in homemade cupcakes with vanilla frosting, and even our supervisor, Mrs. Patterson, stopped by to wish me well. "How are you celebrating tonight?" Sarah asked during our lunch break as we shared the cupcakes in the staff room. "Oh, probably just a quiet dinner at home," I replied, not wanting to admit that Robert had forgotten entirely. "That sounds lovely," Linda said, but I caught her exchanging a concerned look with Sarah. They had heard me make similar excuses for Robert's behavior before. The afternoon passed pleasantly, as several regular library patrons, people who had gotten to know me over the years, offered birthday wishes. Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who came in twice a week for mystery novels, brought me a small potted orchid. "For bringing joy to others," she said with a warm smile. "You should receive joy in return." Driving home that evening, I allowed myself to imagine that Robert had planned a surprise. Maybe he had left work early to prepare something special, or perhaps he had ordered dinner from my favorite Italian restaurant. Maybe he had simply been pretending to forget, building up to a wonderful revelation. But when I pulled into our driveway, the house looked exactly as I had left it. No additional cars, no signs of preparation, no lights on except the automatic timer lamp in the living room. Robert's car was not even there yet. Inside, everything remained exactly as I had left it that morning. The breakfast dishes still sat in the sink unwashed. Robert's coffee mug sat on the counter with a brown ring staining the bottom. The newspaper lay spread across the kitchen table sections, scattered where he had abandoned them. I stood in my own kitchen, still wearing my favorite blue blouse, and felt something crack inside my chest. This was my 52nd birthday. I had spent 28 years caring for this man, this house, this life we had built together, and today, I was completely invisible. Rather than sink into self-pity, I made a decision. If Robert was not going to acknowledge my birthday, I would acknowledge it myself. I called our friends and neighbors, inviting them for an impromptu dinner party. Nothing fancy. I told each person, just a small gathering to celebrate another year of life. By 6 o'clock, I had confirmations from 3 couples, Sarah and her husband Mark, Linda, and her husband Dave, and our neighbors Tom and Susan, from 2 houses down. I spent the next hour and a half preparing what would become the most important meal of my marriage. I threw myself into party preparations with an energy I had not felt in years. This birthday celebration would happen with or without Robert's participation. From our freezer, I pulled out the ingredients for my famous lasagna, the one that always received compliments at potluck dinners. I layered the pasta ricotta and meat sauce with extra care, adding fresh basil from the small herb garden I maintained by our back door. For sides, I prepared a Caesar salad with homemade croutons and my grandmother's dinner rolls, a recipe I had perfected over the years, but rarely had occasion to use anymore. The house filled with wonderful aromas as the lasagna baked and the rolls rose in their pans. Robert arrived home at 7:15, just as I was setting our dining room table for 8 people. He stood in the doorway, tie-loosened briefcase still in hand, staring at the good china and cloth napkins. "What's all this?" he asked, gesturing vaguely at the table settings. "I invited some friends over for dinner," I replied calmly, lighting the candles in our silver candlesticks, a wedding gift we rarely used. "Friends, tonight I told you I'd be late." "Yes, and I decided to celebrate my birthday anyway." Robert's face went blank for a moment, and I watched as the realization dawned on him. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. "Your birthday. Right. Today. October 23rd. I confirmed, continuing to arrange the table. "Same day as every year for the past 52 years. "Well, why didn't you remind me I've been swamped with work?" "Robert, we've been married for 28 years. I shouldn't have to remind you of my birthday." He stood there for another moment, clearly trying to figure out how to recover from this obvious oversight, when the doorbell rang. Sarah and Mark had arrived carrying a bottle of wine and a small wrapped gift. "Happy birthday, Ethel," Sarah called out as I welcomed them in. Mark shook Robert's hand and clapped him on the back. "Big celebration tonight, I see," Mark said cheerfully. "Ethel mentioned you two were having friends over for her special day." Robert forced a smile and nodded, but I could see the embarrassment in his eyes. He had been caught publicly having forgotten his wife's birthday. Linda and Dave arrived shortly after, followed by Tom and Susan. Soon our dining room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Everyone complimented the food, the table setting, and the warm atmosphere. I felt more appreciated in those first 30 minutes than I had in months. During dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Linda shared news about her daughter's promotion. Tom discussed his retirement plans. Susan talked about the community garden project she was organizing. I found myself actively participating in ways I had almost forgotten I could. "Ethel, this lasagna is absolutely incredible," Dave said, taking a second helping. "You could open a restaurant." "She's got so many talents," Sarah added. "Have you seen the way she organizes the library's community events? Everything runs like clockwork." "And her book recommendations," Mark chimed in. "She introduced me to that mystery series I couldn't put down last month." I felt a warmth spreading through me as my friends acknowledged not just my cooking, but my skills, my mind, my contributions beyond the domestic sphere. For a moment, I felt like the person I used to be, the person I had somehow lost along the way. Robert sat at the head of the table, nodding and smiling, but contributing little to the conversation. I noticed him growing increasingly uncomfortable as the praise continued. Then Tom, perhaps thinking he was being kind to Robert, made the comment that changed everything. "Robert, you're so lucky to have Ethel. She's like a professional chef and decorator and librarian, all rolled into one amazing woman." The table quieted for a moment, as everyone looked expectantly at Robert, waiting for him to agree to acknowledge my value, to express gratitude for the life we had built together. Instead, Robert laughed. Not a warm, appreciative laugh, but a dismissive, almost mocking sound that made my blood run cold. "Lucky," he said, his voice carrying clearly across our dining room to every person present. "She's basically my personal maid who happens to live here. That's all she's good for, cleaning and serving me. I pay the bill, so she does the work. Fair trade, right? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the faces around our table transform from cheerful expectation to shock, then embarrassment, then anger on my behalf. Sarah's mouth literally fell open. Mark stared at Robert as if he had just witnessed something unbelievable. Linda's cheeks flushed red, and Dave looked down at his plate uncomfortably. Tom and Susan exchanged the kind of look that passes between a couple who cannot believe what they have just witnessed. But I felt something different than shock or embarrassment. Standing there in my favorite blue blouse in the dining room, where I had just served a meal I had prepared with love and care, surrounded by friends who appreciated me, I felt a clarity I had not experienced in years. 28 years of my life had just been reduced to maid service. In front of people who respected me, my husband of nearly 3 decades had announced that I was nothing more than hired help who happened to share his bed. I looked at Robert, really looked at him, and saw not the man I had married, but someone who had grown comfortable with disrespect, someone who genuinely believed that his financial contribution gave him the right to diminish me publicly. "Excuse me," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm building inside me. "I need to check on dessert." I walked calmly to the kitchen, leaving behind a table of people who were struggling to process what they had just heard. But I was not going to check on dessert. I was going to check on something much more important, my self-respect. In the privacy of our kitchen, I stood with my hands braced against the counter, breathing deeply and letting Robert's words replay in my mind. "Personal maid who happens to live here. That's all she's good for. I pay the bills so she does the work." 28 years of marriage, and this was how he truly saw me. Not as his partner, not as the mother of his children, not as a woman with her own skills and dreams and value, as hired help. The kitchen door swung open behind me, and I turned to see Sarah approaching cautiously. "Ethel, honey, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I replied, and surprisingly I meant it. "Actually, I think I'm better than fine. I think I'm finally awake." What he said in there that was completely unacceptable. Mark is ready to give him a piece of his mind. "Please don't. This is something I need to handle myself." Sarah studied my face carefully. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that my husband just told a room full of people exactly what he thinks of me, and maybe it's time I showed him exactly what life looks like without his personal maid." "Good for you," Sarah said fiercely. "Whatever you decide to do, Linda and I are behind you 100%. I hugged my friend, grateful for her support, then returned to the dining room with the chocolate cake I had baked that afternoon. The conversation had resumed, but the energy was strained. Robert sat quietly now, perhaps beginning to realize the magnitude of his mistake, but showing no signs of attempting to repair the damage. The rest of the evening passed awkwardly. Our friends made valiant efforts to restore the celebratory mood, but Robert's words hung over the table like a dark cloud. When people began making excuses to leave earlier than usual, I walked each couple to the door with genuine warmth, thanking them for helping make my birthday special despite everything. "Call me if you need anything," Linda whispered as she hugged me goodbye. "Anything at all." After the last guest left, I began clearing the dinner dishes. Robert had retreated to his recliner and turned on the television, apparently considering the evening over and his responsibilities fulfilled. "Aren't you going to help clean up?" I asked from the dining room doorway. "That's your department," he replied without turning around. "Besides, it was your party." "My party that you forgot about until our guests arrived." "Look, I said I was sorry about that. I've been busy." "When did you say you were sorry, Robert? Because I don't remember hearing an apology." He waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever. Can we just move on? I've got an early meeting tomorrow." I stood there watching him, this man who had just publicly humiliated me and now could not even be bothered to help clean up the mess from my own birthday dinner. Something fundamental shifted inside me as I realized that this was not a moment of thoughtless cruelty. This was simply Robert showing me who he really was, who he had been becoming for years while I made excuses for him. I cleaned the kitchen methodically, washing each dish by hand, despite having a perfectly good dishwasher using the time to think. The good china required careful attention, and the physical activity helped me process the emotions swirling through me. By the time I finished, it was nearly 11 o'clock. Robert had gone upstairs to bed without saying goodnight, leaving his empty beer bottle on the side table and his dinner napkin on the floor beside his chair. I turned off all the lights and sat at our kitchen table in the darkness, looking out at our backyard through the window. The motion sensor light had come on, illuminating the small garden I tended, the patio furniture. I maintained the outdoor space I kept beautiful for a man who saw me as nothing more than a maid. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to really consider my life. What did I want? What would make me happy? What would I do if I were not spending all my energy making someone else comfortable? I thought about my job at the library, how much I loved helping people find exactly the book they needed, how satisfying it felt to organize community events that brought people together. I thought about the dreams I had put aside when I reduced my hours, the promotion opportunities I had declined because they would have interfered with Robert's expectations. I thought about my friends, how they valued my opinions and sought my advice, how they saw me as intelligent and capable. I thought about my children, both successful adults who loved and respected me, who had learned from my example what it meant to work hard and care for others. And I thought about the woman I used to be before I began shrinking myself to fit into Robert's idea of a convenient wife. Sitting there in the dark kitchen, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being Robert's maid. I was done accepting crumbs of respect from a man who should have been my partner. I was done living as if his contribution to our household was the only one that mattered. Tomorrow, I would begin showing Robert what life looked like when he had to take care of himself. Not out of spite or revenge, but out of self-respect. If I was just a maid to him, then this maid was giving her notice. I went upstairs, quietly careful not to wake Robert, and began planning the rest of my life. The next morning, I woke up at my usual time, but felt completely different. For 28 years, my first thought each day had been about what Robert needed: his coffee, his breakfast, his clean clothes, his schedule. This morning, my first thought was about what I needed. I got dressed, carefully choosing a professional outfit suitable for the library, then went downstairs to prepare my own simple breakfast. I made coffee for one, toasted a single slice of bread, and sat at the kitchen table reading a book while I ate. At 6:15, Robert's usual breakfast time, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway in his bathrobe, looking around in confusion. "Where's my coffee?" he asked. "In the pot," I replied, calmly, not looking up from my book. "Help yourself." "What do you mean, help myself? Where's my breakfast?" "I imagine it's wherever you decide to make it." Robert stared at me as if I had spoken in a foreign language. "Ethel, what's gotten into you? Make my breakfast." I marked my place in the book and looked at him directly. "Robert, I'm going to work early today. If you need breakfast, the kitchen is fully stocked." "This is ridiculous. You always make breakfast." "Yes, I always have. But as you explained to our friends last night, I'm just the maid who happens to live here, and this maid is changing her job description." I stood up, rinsed my coffee mug and plate, and picked up my purse. Robert stood speechless in the kitchen doorway as I walked past him toward the garage. "Ethel, come back here. We need to talk about this." "We can talk tonight," I called back, "after you've figured out how to feed yourself." At the library, I asked Mrs. Patterson if we could discuss my employment status. To my delight, she had been hoping for exactly this conversation. "Ethel, you're one of our best employees," she said warmly. "We've had a full-time position open up, and I was wondering if you might be interested. It would mean more responsibility, a significant salary increase, and benefits." "What kind of salary are we talking about?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. $45,000 annually, plus health insurance and retirement contributions. You'd be managing our community outreach programs and supervising the part-time staff. I accepted on the spot. $45,000 would be enough for me to live independently if I needed to. More importantly, it represented recognition of my value as a professional, something I had been missing at home. The rest of the day passed quickly as I threw myself into work with renewed energy. Sarah and Linda checked on me several times, both offering their support and expressing admiration for my decision to stand up for myself. "How do you think Robert handled being on his own today?" Sarah asked during our afternoon break. "I guess we'll find out tonight," I replied, feeling both nervous and exhilarated about what I might find at home. When I arrived home at 6 o'clock, the house told the story of Robert's day. Dirty dishes sat scattered across the kitchen counter. An empty cereal box lay on its side next to the sink. Coffee grounds were spilled across the counter, and a brown puddle had dried on the white surface where he had apparently overfilled his mug. The breakfast dishes from yesterday, which I had purposely left for him, remained exactly where I had left them. Robert had simply worked around them, adding his own mess to the pile. I found Robert in the living room looking disheveled and frustrated. His shirt was wrinkled, and he had a small stain on his tie. "There you are," he said when I walked in. "Do you see the mess in the kitchen? I couldn't find anything this morning." "The mess you made?" I asked mildly. "The mess that happened because you didn't do your job." "My job, Robert, is at the library. I got a promotion today, actually. Full-time with benefits." "What? You can't work full-time. Who's going to take care of the house? Who's going to take care of me?" I sat down across from him, feeling calmer than I had in years. "You're a grown man, Robert. I assume you'll take care of yourself the same way you did before you married me." "That's not how marriage works, Ethel." "You're right," I agreed. "Marriage is supposed to be a partnership between equals who respect each other. But that's not what we have, is it?" "Don't be dramatic. So I said something stupid last night. I didn't mean anything by it. You called me a maid, Robert, in front of our friends. You said that paying bills gives you the right to have me serve you. That's not something you say accidentally." "Fine, I'm sorry. Are you happy now? Can we get back to normal?" "Normal for you means I do everything, while you do nothing. Normal for you means my contributions don't matter, because they don't come with a paycheck. Normal for you means I should be grateful to serve you, because you allow me to live in the house I also help maintain." Robert's face reddened. "I work hard to support this family. And I work hard to maintain this family. The difference is, I also work hard to support it now with my new full-time position." "What's for dinner?" he asked, apparently deciding to ignore everything I had just said. "I don't know, Robert. What are you making for dinner?" "I'm not making dinner. That's your job." "According to you, I'm just a maid, but this maid is officially off duty." I went upstairs to change clothes, leaving Robert sputtering in the living room. This was only the beginning. The following days revealed just how much Robert had taken my contributions for granted. By Wednesday, the house looked like a disaster zone. Dirty clothes overflowed from the hamper in our bedroom because Robert had never learned to operate our washing machine. The kitchen sink was full of dishes he had used and abandoned, and he had taken to eating sandwiches and ordering takeout rather than attempting to cook anything. Thursday morning, I found Robert standing in our closet in his underwear looking bewildered. "Ethel, I don't have any clean dress shirts." "That's unfortunate," I replied, selecting my outfit for the day. "Well, do some laundry." "I'll be doing my laundry this weekend. If you need clean clothes, I suggest you figure out how the washing machine works." "I don't know how to use the washing machine." "There are instructions printed right on the front panel, or you could look it up online, or ask your mother." "My mother? Why would I call my mother?" "Because she's the woman who took care of you before I took over the job." Friday evening, Robert attempted to cook dinner and nearly set off our smoke alarm trying to make grilled cheese sandwiches. The smell of burned bread filled the house, and I came downstairs to find him scraping black char off our good pan. "This is ridiculous, Ethel. I could burn the house down." "Then maybe you should take a cooking class. Or maybe you should stop being childish and cook dinner like a normal wife." Robert, normal wives have normal husbands who treat them like partners instead of servants. Saturday, he tried a different approach. He went to the grocery store and bought flowers, expensive ones from the floral department. These are for you, he said, presenting them with what I think he believed was a charming smile. Now, can we please get back to the way things were? They're beautiful, I said, genuinely appreciating the gesture. Thank you. So you'll make dinner tonight? No. But I bought you flowers. Robert, flowers are lovely, but they don't undo years of being taken for granted. They don't erase being called a maid in front of our friends, and they certainly don't entitle you to expect immediate service. By Sunday, Robert was getting desperate. He had called his mother, who lived 3 hours away in Savannah, to complain about my behavior. I knew this because she called me directly afterward. Ethel, honey, said Mrs. Wilson in her gentle Southern accent, Robert tells me you two are having some difficulties. Hello, Mrs. Wilson. We are indeed. He says you've stopped cooking and cleaning for him. That's correct. There was a pause. Well, good for you, dear. Excuse me. Ethel, I raised that boy to be independent and respectful. Somewhere along the way, he forgot both lessons. Maybe it's time he remembered them. I wasn't sure how you'd feel about this. Honey, I've been watching him take you for granted for years. I love my son, but he's been acting like a spoiled child instead of a grown man. You're doing the right thing. Monday morning brought a new level of crisis. Robert had run out of clean underwear and was forced to wear a swimsuit under his work clothes. When he realized I was not going to solve this problem for him, he finally attempted to use the washing machine. I found him standing in front of it, holding the instruction manual, looking completely overwhelmed. How much detergent do I use? It says right there on the bottle. But do I use hot water or cold water? What does the manual say? It says it depends on the fabric and the soil level. What does that mean? For a moment, I felt sorry for him. This was a 55-year-old successful businessman who could manage complex financial portfolios, but had never learned to do his own laundry because he had always had a woman to do it for him. But then I remembered his words from my birthday dinner, and my sympathy faded. This learned helplessness was a choice, not an affliction. Robert, you're an intelligent man who graduated from college and runs his own business. I'm confident you can figure out the washing machine. By the end of the second week, our house looked like a fraternity after rush week. Robert was eating cereal for dinner and had taken to bringing his laundry to a dry cleaner, which was costing him a fortune. He had given up asking me to resume my old responsibilities and had started making comments about hiring a cleaning service. Fine, he announced Tuesday evening. I'll hire a maid, a real one who does what she's paid for. That's a great idea, I agreed. You should definitely hire someone to clean up after you. And a cook. I'll hire a cook too. If you can afford it, that sounds perfect. Robert seemed taken aback by my agreement. I think he had expected me to object to volunteer to resume my old role rather than see him spend money on professional services. Instead, I was thriving. My new full-time position at the library was everything I had hoped it would be. I was organizing author readings, coordinating with local schools for reading programs, and managing a team of volunteers who respected my leadership skills. For the first time in years, I felt intellectually stimulated and professionally valued. I had also started looking at apartments, not because I had definitely decided to leave, but because I wanted to know what my options were. I found a charming one-bedroom unit just 6 blocks from the library with a hardwood floors and a small balcony. The rent was reasonable, and for the first time in decades, I imagined having my own space decorated according to my own taste, where I could read in peace without someone demanding to know what was for dinner. Robert noticed my new energy and independence, and I could see it was beginning to worry him. The man who had taken my presence for granted was starting to realize what life might look like without me. By the 3rd week of my domestic strike, Robert had reached his breaking point. The cleaning service he hired lasted exactly 1 visit after they found the state he had left our house in. The cook he attempted to hire through a catering service was too expensive for regular use. He was spending hundreds of dollars per week on restaurants, dry cleaning, and various services to replace what I had been providing for free. More importantly, He was beginning to understand exactly how much work was involved in maintaining our lifestyle. The grocery shopping alone had become an ordeal for him. He would call me from the store with questions about everything from which brand of bread to buy to where the cleaning supplies were located. Thursday evening, I came home from work to find Robert sitting at our kitchen table with his head in his hands. The house was quiet, cleaner than it had been in weeks, and I could smell something cooking in the oven. "What's this?" I asked, looking around in surprise. "I spent my entire lunch break cleaning," he said without looking up. "And I made a casserole from a recipe I found online. It's probably terrible." I checked the oven and found a reasonably decent-looking tuna noodle casserole, one of my comfort food recipes that he must have searched for specifically. "It smells good," I said honestly. "Ethel, I need to talk to you." I sat down across from him at the table where I had been eating alone for 3 weeks. Robert looked tired, older somehow, and genuinely humble in a way I had not seen in years. "I've been thinking about what I said on your birthday," he began slowly, "about calling you a maid. And I realized that even if you were actually a maid, no one deserves to be talked to that way. But you're not a maid. You're my wife. You're the mother of our children. You're a smart, capable woman who has been taking care of me for 28 years, while I acted like it was something I was entitled to instead of something I should be grateful for." I waited for him to continue. "I don't know how to do any of this stuff, Ethel. I don't know how to keep a house clean, or plan meals, or remember to buy groceries before we run out of everything. I don't know how to coordinate social events, or remember people's birthdays, or any of the hundreds of things you do that make our life work. Those are all learnable skills, Robert. Maybe, but even if I learned them all, I would never be as good at them as you are. And more than that, I realized this week that I don't want to do them alone. I don't want to eat dinner by myself every night. I don't want to live in a house where we don't talk to each other. I don't want to be married to someone I treat like an employee." He looked up at me with tears in his eyes, and I saw genuine remorse there. "I want to be married to my partner," he continued. "I want to be married to the woman who's smart enough to organize a library and kind enough to remember everyone's favorite books and strong enough to put up with me for 28 years. I want to be married to Ethel, not to a maid." "What does that mean, practically speaking?" I asked. "It means I want to learn how to be a better husband. It means I want to share the work instead of expecting you to do it all. It means I want to appreciate what you do instead of taking it for granted. It means I want to build a partnership instead of running a household where I'm the boss and you're the staff." I sat quietly for a moment processing his words. This was the most honest conversation we had had in years, maybe in our entire marriage. "Robert, I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago," I said finally. "I've remembered who I am when I'm not constantly focused on taking care of someone else. I like that person. I'm not going back to being invisible in my own life." "I don't want you to go back to that. I like this version of you too. You're more confident, more independent. You seem happier." "I am happier. Even though our marriage is falling apart." "Our marriage was already falling apart, Robert. It was just falling apart quietly with me doing all the work to hold it together while you took all the credit." We talked until nearly midnight, the longest real conversation we had shared in years. Robert asked me about my new position at the library, and I told him about the programs I was developing and the promotion opportunities on the horizon. He listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in my work. I told him about the apartment I had been looking at, not to hurt him, but to be honest about where my thoughts had been heading. "Do you want to move out?" he asked quietly. "I want to stay married," I replied, "but I need to know that staying married means being married to a partner, not being married to someone who thinks paying bills makes him exempt from being a decent human being." "How do I prove to you that I can be a partner?" "You start by proving it to yourself, Robert. You learn to take care of your own basic needs. You start contributing to our household in meaningful ways. You start treating me like someone you're grateful to have in your life instead of someone you're entitled to command. And if I do all that, then maybe we can rebuild something worth saving." The next morning, Robert got up early and made coffee for both of us. It was not as strong as I preferred, but it was a start. 6 months later, I barely recognized my marriage or my life, and I mean that in the most wonderful way possible. Robert did learn to do his own laundry, though he still separates everything into far too many loads and uses twice as much detergent as necessary. He took a basic cooking class at the community college and can now prepare about 6 different meals competently, which is exactly 6 more than he could make before. We share grocery shopping duties, and he has developed strong opinions about produce quality that amuse me endlessly. More importantly, he learned to see the invisible work that keeps a household running. He notices when we're running low on household supplies and adds them to our shared shopping list. He schedules his own doctor's appointments and keeps track of his own commitments. He thanks me when I cook dinner, and I thank him when he takes care of the yard work he has newly taken over. Our house is not as perfectly maintained as it was when I did everything myself, but it feels more like a home where 2 adults live together, rather than a hotel where one person serves the other. I kept my full-time position at the library and was recently promoted again to head of community services. I love my work in ways I had forgotten were possible. Robert has started attending some of the author readings I organize, and I have started joining him occasionally for golf, a game I am terrible at but enjoy anyway. We go out to dinner twice a week, taking turns choosing the restaurant. We talk more than we have in years about books and politics and our children's lives and our own dreams for the future. Emma and Jacob have both noticed the change in our dynamic during their visits home. "You two seem like you actually like each other again," Emma observed during Christmas break. "I did not move to that apartment, but I kept the lease information just in case. Security, I have learned, does not come from someone else taking care of you. It comes from knowing that you can take care of yourself and choosing to share your life with someone who values that strength rather than trying to diminish it. Robert and I are rebuilding our marriage from the ground up, and it feels like dating someone I have known for decades. We are learning to be partners instead of a boss and an employee. We are learning to appreciate each other's contributions instead of taking them for granted. I learned that respect is not something you beg for or hope to receive as a gift. Respect is something you command by respecting yourself first and refusing to accept anything less from others. I learned that it is never too late to remember who you are underneath all the roles you play for other people. I am Ethel. I am 52 years old. I am a librarian, a mother, a friend, and a woman who refuses to be invisible in her own life. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst behaviors. By refusing to be Robert's maid, I gave him the opportunity to become my partner. Most importantly, I learned that marriage should make both people better versions of themselves, not smaller, dimmer, more diminished versions. After 28 years of marriage, Robert and I are finally learning what it means to choose each other every day instead of just assuming the other person will always be there to serve our needs. And you know what? It turns out that when you stop being someone's maid and start being their equal, love has room to grow again. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where you felt taken for granted? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your strength and taking back your power. And please share this with anyone who might need a reminder that it is never too late to demand the respect you deserve. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your life is yours to live on your own terms. You are worth so much more than being anyone's maid.